The 11th of December, 1941. Nazi Germany officially declares war on the United States. Adolf Hitler makes this hazardous move, accusing America of provoking conflict through its support of Britain and naval confrontations. Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop personally delivers the chilling message to American diplomats. This declaration destroys any remaining American neutrality and plunges the US into the global chaos of the Second World War. But Germany's intentions go beyond mere words. The Nazis plan to unleash terror and devastation directly on American soil by blowing up factories and railways and setting shops ablaze. A spy and saboteur chosen to carry out this destructive mission is a man who once gained citizenship from the United States only to betray the very nation that welcomed him. His name is Herbert Hans Haupt. Herbert Hans Haupt was born on the 21st of December, 1919 in the busy Baltic port of Stettin, today's Polish Szczecin, then part of the German Empire. His father, Hans Max Haupt, had served in the Kaiser's army during the First World War, and like thousands of other veterans, found post-war Germany short of jobs and shorter of opportunity. In 1923, he sailed for the United States of America to look for steady work, promising to send for his wife Erna and their only child as soon as he gained a foothold. 2 years later, in 1925, the Haupt family reunited in Chicago, a city that offered newcomers a fair chance for a new life, and there were whole neighborhoods where German shop signs softened homesickness with German cuisine and products. In 1930, the United States granted the Haupt family citizenship, and the 10-year-old Herbert swore the oath beneath the striped flag in a courthouse. He spoke English easily by then, thanks to playground games with friends and the school system in the country. Later, he went to the Lane Tech High School, where he learned mechanical drawing and the basics of optical grinding. After graduation, he accepted an apprenticeship at Simpson Optical Company, polishing lenses and fine-tuning spectacles. Customers liked the polite youth with the careful hands, and supervisors marked him down as reliable. Yet inside that Chicago life beat another rhythm. On weekends, Herbert joined the Junior League of the German-American Bund, an organization that marched in army columns and carried 2 flags, the American stars and stripes and the swastika banner, and taught members to sing German folk songs about a reborn fatherland, Nazi Germany. Herbert admired the uniforms, the rhetoric of national revival, and the aura of belonging to the Nazi ideology. At one gathering, he spoke warmly of Nazism and earned a slap in the face from his fellow Lawrence J. Jordan, who could not stomach Hitler talk in America. The incident stung, but it did not shake Herbert's convictions and interest in Nazi ideology. He even claimed that Germany was better than the United States. The Second World War began on the 1st of September 1939, when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. In 1941, his private life collided with global events. His girlfriend announced that she was pregnant, and the prospect of fatherhood at a young age frightened him. With 2 friends, Wolfgang Vergin and Hugo Troesken, he decided to go on a quick flight to Mexico, hoping perhaps to find work or simply a new horizon far from parental disapproval of their actions. At the border, Troesken, lacking proper documents, was turned back, but Haupt and Vergin proceeded with their journey. Because both had been born on German soil, Berlin still considered them German citizens, and in Mexico City the German embassy issued them with fresh passports of the Nazi Third Reich. From Mexico, the pair boarded a ship across the Pacific and arrived in Japan, where they briefly lodged at what was described to them as a monastery but proved to be, at the end of the day, a labor camp. They slipped away and signed on as deckhands on a German merchant vessel bound for occupied France. During that voyage, Herbert served as a lookout and helped the captain to find a path through the blockade created by the British Royal Navy. For this feat, the German authorities later awarded him the Iron Cross Second Class, an honor that drew the notice of Abwehr, German military intelligence service. By December 1941, Haupt was back in Europe and living with his grandmother in Stettin. Soon after he arrived, news crackled from the radio. Japanese planes had bombed Pearl Harbor. Hitler, 4 days later, had declared war on the United States. Herbert, now stranded in a continent at total war with his adopted country, came to the attention of Admiral Wilhelm Canaris's military intelligence service. The Abwehr needed English-speaking agents familiar with American streets, and Herbert, with 10 Chicago years behind him, seemed a perfect recruit. Later, he would claim he accepted the mission only as a ticket home. Whatever his motives, he agreed. At Quensee near Berlin, on an estate of the German High Command, he joined other recruits for 3 weeks of intensive schooling. They learned to blend explosives, wire timing devices, forge documents, and keep their cover stories straight under interrogation. Instructors handed out English newspapers, reminding them to keep accents fresh and references current. They practiced American slang, and a considerable time was spent developing complete background personal histories they were to use in the United States. They were encouraged to converse in English and to read American newspapers and magazines to improve their language skills and familiarity with current American events and culture. Herbert stood out as one of 2 American citizens, George John Dasch was the other, and as a man who could possibly navigate other agents in Chicago without a street map. By spring 1942, 8 agents were selected for action, and Admiral Canaris named the mission Operation Pastorius. The aim was sabotage on a scale large enough to shake American morale, blowing up hydroelectric plants at Niagara Falls, wrecking the Pennsylvania Railroad's vital horseshoe curve, and crippling aluminum works in Tennessee and Illinois. The agents were also instructed to spread a wave of terror by planting explosives on bridges, railroad stations, water facilities, public places, and Jewish-owned shops. Each man received forged birth certificates, social security cards, draft deferments, driver's licenses, and an equal share of nearly $175,000 in American cash. Even before the mission began, it was in danger of being compromised, as George John Dasch left confidential documents on a train, and one of the agents, while drunk, announced in a tavern in Paris that he was a secret agent. 2 German submarines, U-boats, would deliver the teams. On the night of the 12th of June 1942, U-202 surfaced near Long Island in New York. George John Dasch, Ernest Peterberger, Richard Quirin, and Heinrich Heinck climbed into rubber rafts, rowed to the beaches, and came ashore in German naval uniforms so that, if captured, they might claim prisoner of war status. They also brought their explosives, primers, and incendiaries, buried them along with their uniforms, and put on civilian clothes to begin an expected 2-year campaign of terror in America. Almost immediately alone, Coast Guardsman John Cullen stumbled upon them. Dasch tried to bribe him with few $100s. Cullen pretended to cooperate with the German agents, but later raised the alarm. When an armed patrol came, the Germans were gone, having buried uniforms and boxes of explosives beneath the sand, and boarded the early train to Manhattan. 3 nights later, on the 16th of June 1942, another German submarine, U-584, set its men on Ponte Vedra Beach, south of Jacksonville, in Florida. The team consisted of Edward John Curling, Hermann Otto Neubauer, Werner Thiel, and Herbert Haupt. They wore bathing suits and German Navy hats. After successful landing, they discarded the caps in the dunes, put civilian clothes on, and started their mission by boarding trains to Chicago, Illinois, and Cincinnati. Herbert Haupt rode to Chicago not only to see his parents and girlfriend, but also to start his mission. The meeting with his girlfriend was bittersweet. The baby had been lost through miscarriage. He now promised her marriage and spoke freely, even recklessly, about working for the German government. According to investigators, he asked his father to buy him a sports car, explaining that his official business for German government required fast travel. These loose words, combined with the fact that at that time George John Dasch was considering a betrayal, sealed fate of the Nazi agents in America. Because at the very moment when Haupt settled into his boyhood bedroom in Chicago, George John Dasch was doubting his mission. Shocked by Cullen nearly spoiling their landing, and repelled by planned terror bombings, Dasch called the FBI's New York office under the alias Franz Pastorius. The duty agent dismissed him as a prankster. Dasch decided to go to Washington, D.C., walked directly into the FBI headquarters, and spilled the entire plot, complete with $84,000 of mission funds as proof. Director of the FBI John Edgar Hoover kept the defection secret, preferring a better-looking story in which the FBI cracked the case without help. On the 27th of June, the FBI arrested Herbert Haupt, his parents, and several of his acquaintances in Chicago. In a few weeks, all 8 saboteurs were in custody. President Franklin Roosevelt, determined to exact swift justice, issued an executive proclamation creating a military tribunal. The defense fought to have the defendants tried by ordinary courts, but the Supreme Court upheld Roosevelt's idea of a military tribunal. Across July 1942, the proceedings unfolded. Charges of violating the law of war, spying, and conspiracy. Although none of the men had set a single charge or cut a single rail, the panel found all guilty on the 1st of August 1942 and sentenced them to death. Roosevelt changed Dasch's penalty to 30 years and Berger's to a life sentence for their confessions. The remaining 6, Haupt, Curling, Neubauer, Thiel, Heinck, and Querin, were sentenced to death by electric chair. Meanwhile, in Germany, the failure of Operation Pastorius provoked Hitler's anger. He lashed out at Admiral Canaris, accusing the Abwehr of incompetence, and cancelled further sabotage attempts on American soil. On the 8th of August 1942, the former agents were led one by one to the 3rd floor of the District of Columbia jail. Herbert Haupt, 22 years old at the time, was the youngest. He wrote a final note to his father that never reached its destination. The note said, "Try not to take it too hard. I have brought nothing but grief to all of my friends and relatives who did nothing wrong. My last thoughts will be of Mother." Shortly after these last words, the electric current surged, and within minutes the body of Herbert Hans Haupt was wheeled away to a field for anonymous burial. Haupt's execution carried a grim distinction. He was the only American citizen put to death during the war for collaboration with the Axis powers. 16 others, including his parents, faced charges of aiding saboteurs. Some received prison terms, though most were released in the years following the end of the Second World War. The German-American Bund had been dissolved under public suspicion of collaboration with the enemy as early as December 1941, and the house where Herbert had once dressed in his brown uniform was sold. Herbert Hans Haupt's story began in the chilly streets of Stettin and ended on a wooden chair wired to thick copper wires. He never placed a bomb and never blew up a bridge, yet history judged intent as harshly as deed. The world in which he gambled collapsed within 3 years, leaving only court records, newspaper clippings, and the unanswered question of how a young man's search for belonging could curdle into betrayal. Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.